What's up YouTube? Seth here. Welcome back to Batslayer MMA. I'm back with another fight breakdown video. You know, this is my third one. The last two, GSP versus Michael Bisping and Chris Cyborg versus Holly Holm. They both had over 1,000 views in less than a week. They both had a lot of comments, a lot of great feedback from you guys. So I definitely want to start the new year with another fight breakdown video. This one between the current light heavyweight champion Daniel DC Cormier versus Volkan Oezdemir. First category, let's take a look at size. As far as height goes, Volkan Oezdemir is slightly taller. He does have a 3-inch reach advantage, which being a striker is definitely going to come to his advantage. As far as weight goes, they both probably going to enter the cage 215 or 220 pounds. Both of these guys have competed in the heavyweight as a past. So as far as size goes, you're going to have to give it to Volkan Oezdemir. He is the taller guy. He does have a longer reach, and he's going to be the same weight on the night of the fight as DC. Number two, let's take a look at striking. Obviously, Volkan Oezdemir is a standout fighter. He's finished his last two opponents, on the feet, strikes relatively quickly. Take a look at the significant strikes landed. Volkan does land about 6 significant strikes per minute, whereas DC lands about close to 4. DC is slightly more accurate with his strikes. And as far as defense goes, they are identical. On paper, they're pretty much identical in striking, and I think that's a fair point. Even though Volkan is a stand-up fighter, DC's stand-up is underrated, man. He has fantastic stand-up. He has got great power in his hands. Volkan has power, but so does DC. You saw him when he knocked out Antonio Silva right after Antonio Silva beat up Fedor. So this was when Antonio was like, at the height of his career. He just defeated Fedor. He was definitely a favorite, and DC knocked him out. But I think you have to give the striking advantage to Volkan Oezdemir in this case, because that's all Volkan is doing. That's all we've seen him from. Out of his 15 wins, Volkan has won 11 by knockout. So he definitely has power in his hands. He definitely is great on his stand-up. So I'm definitely going to give a slight advantage to Volkan Oezdemir. But I think DC's stand-up is mad underrated, and I think he's actually really, really good on his stand-up as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if he knocks out Volkan Oezdemir relatively quickly. Number three, grappling. As far as grappling goes, obviously DC is going to be the favorite here. He was an NCAA Division I wrestler. He's an Olympian. He averages about 2 takedowns per fight, but I am surprised at his takedown accuracy, which is only at 41%. I expect it to be much higher, but he does have a solid takedown defense at 80%. Volkan has his takedown defense of 100%, but he's been ending his fights relatively quickly. When he made his debut against Owen St. Preux, that was a fight that he took on short notice. It was a split decision. We didn't really see him as a world beater in that fight. But since then, he's knocked out Misha and Jimmy Manuwa in just seconds in the first round. So we really haven't seen much grappling. So definitely the advantage, you're gonna have to give a big advantage to DC for grappling. Category number 4, cardio. Now, guys, you've never seen these guys fight before. You just judge them based on their body type. You would think that Volkan would have the cardio advantage, but DC has great cardio. He has that embrace the grind mentality. That's how he fights. He pushes the pace nonstop. Really, the only guy that outworked DC in his entire career was John Jones. DC has outworked everyone. When he was fighting in Strikeforce against the heavyweights, when he came to the UFC and dropped down light heavyweight, he's outworked Alexander Gustafsson. He's outworked Josh Barnett, Rumble Johnson. So cardio is a big, big factor. Even though DC does have a rough time cutting weight and he is getting older in age, he should still have the cardio advantage. We've only seen Volkan go to a decision one time in the UFC, and he won the fight by split decision. We've seen DC go to the decision multiple times. We've seen him go 5 rounds multiple times. So definitely the cardio advantage on paper should go to DC. Fight IQ. Again, this has to go towards DC. He is not only one of the greatest light heavyweights to ever compete, but he is also one of the best heavyweight fighters on the planet. When he was a heavyweight, he was undefeated. He ran through everyone. I don't even think he lost a round when he was a heavyweight. He was fighting guys like Josh Barnett, Frank Mir, Roy Nelson. He dismantled all of them. Didn't lose a round to any of those guys. So he's one of the best 2-division fighters of all time. And like I said, the only guy who's beaten him is John Jones. And he is, despite all the controversy and all this other crap, he is still the greatest light heavyweight to ever compete. But that being said, DC's fight IQ is definitely up there with the best. Even though Volkan Oezdemir only lost once in his career, as far as fight IQ goes on paper, you have to give the advantage to DC. If you take a look at the categories, Volkan has a slight size advantage, being the taller fighter with the longer reach, and he also has a slight advantage in the striking department, simply because he is a striker. But DC has a significant advantage in grappling. I believe he has a significant advantage in the cardio department. He also has a significant advantage in the fight IQ department as well. And I think another thing that's going to come into play is experience. DC has been there, done that. But this is DC's 7th time fighting for or defending a belt. He's used to being the main event, the co-main event. This is Volkan Oezdemir's first time being in a co-main event. This is going to be the first time where he's going to have all the cameras and all the lights on him. He's going to have way more media responsibility. That's definitely going to come into play as well, and DC's prepared for that. If you take a look at their fight history, DC is an overall fighter. He does everything well. He got good stand-up, he's got great grappling, he's got great conditioning, he's got submission wins, knockout wins, decision wins. He spends about 45% of his time on the feet striking. He spends about 38% of his takedown wrestling, and 17% of the time working on his submission. So overall, man, he is very, very well rounded. If you take a look at Volkan Oezdemir's, granted he only has 3 fights in the UFC, but 100% of the time he spends on his striking. And this is a very small pool because his last 2 fights probably were like a minute combined, so this is not a large sample pool. But you can see Volkan spends majority of his time on the feet. He is a striker. So as far as where the fight's going to go, I think DC's going to be comfortable standing on the feet with Volkan. He's definitely going to be comfortable on the ground, whereas Volkan is definitely going to try to defend the takedowns. He definitely want to keep the fight on the feet. A couple things come into factor. Keep in mind that DC, when he was fighting in the heavyweight division, when he was starting out in his career, he was pretty much untouchable. Like I said, he was beating up everyone. He didn't lose a round. He wasn't in any real danger. But in the last few fights, obviously he got knocked out against Jon Jones. He got finished. I think timing is going to be to Volkan's advantage. DC just got knocked out by Jon Jones. That was the first knockout, first finish loss in his career. Even in his fight against Anthony Johnson, he took a big head kick. Obviously Alexander Gustafsson dropped him with that knee, almost finished him there. Anthony Johnson, when they first fought back in UFC 187, he landed a missile of a right hand that dropped DC, but DC was able to come back and survive and come back with the victory. But he couldn't do that against Jon Jones. He took a head kick, and in my opinion, that head kick was not as powerful as Anthony Johnson's right hand. It was not as powerful as Anthony Johnson's head kick. It was not as powerful as Alexander Gustafsson's knee, but it was a shot that he did not see coming, and maybe it was all those years of fighting that caught up to him. But he definitely took that head kick. He didn't see it. He got down, and Jon Jones finished him. I think that's going to come into play as well. If Volkan Oezdemir can beat him, it's going to be because of timing. It's because of DC. He's getting older. He's having a hard time cutting weight. We all remember that towel scandal. He did just get knocked out. Sometimes fighters are never the same after a brutal knockout loss. So that's definitely going to be in Volkan's favor. If Volkan may be able to touch him and hit him with a right shot that can put DC down, maybe a shot that wouldn't have put DC down 2 years ago or 3 years ago or even a year ago, but now he is more susceptible. So I think that's going to come into Volkan's advantage as well. My prediction for the fight, how I see the fight, I think despite the timing advantage that Volkan has, because he has a lot of momentum, he has a lot of confidence going into this fight, and like I said, he just knocked out his last 2 opponents in a matter of seconds. So he has a lot of confidence in his hands, whereas DC, despite holding the belt, just got knocked out by Jon Jones. No one has forgotten that, especially DC. So as far as momentum goes, as far as confidence goes, Volkan is definitely up here. I think DC has a ton of confidence, but after getting knocked out for the first time in his career, I think there's going to be some doubts going into this fight. So definitely timing, confidence is going to go into. Confidence is again on Volkan's side. Youth is on his side as well. Despite all that, I just don't think Volkan's going to win this fight. DC is one of the best fighters of all time. Pound for pound, he's on that list. And I think because he lost to Jon Jones, people are kind of sweeping him under the rug. But DC is still, on paper, has all the tools and skills necessary to beat Volkan. He's already faced a fighter like Volkan. He's already faced Gustafsson, who is a much better striker than Volkan. He faced Rumble Johnson, who hits much harder. So what is Volkan bringing to the table that DC hasn't seen? In my opinion, really nothing that DC haven't seen. So unless Volkan hits him with that shot that DC does not see coming, unless DC absolutely underestimates him coming into this fight, I just don't see how Volkan can win this fight. And like I said, DC has faced guys that are taller and better strikers, more powerful punchers than him before, and he's beaten them. He has taken some shots though, and I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned if Volkan lands one shot and DC's chin is just not the same and he goes out, that's possible. But I just don't see what Volkan brings to the table that DC hasn't already seen or beaten. Whereas Volkan has never fought a guy like DC. None of the guys that he's fought before the UFC, in the UFC, can be compared to DC. DC is one of the greatest fighters of all time. His fight IQ is up there with one of the greatest of all time. So how I see the fight going, they'll try to keep it on the feet. I don't see Volkan landing any huge shots on DC. I do see DC using his punches to pressure Volkan, to push him back, take him down, and beat him up on the ground, and really fight the way he always does. That grind, embrace the grind mentality, just push him back with non-stop pressure, try to wear him down. And I do see a finish for DC. I think either in the middle of the third round or early fourth round stoppage victory for Daniel Cormier. He will still be the light heavyweight champion of the world. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comment section who you're picking to win and why. Please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I have another fight breakdown video, the main event, Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou. I'm going to put the link in the description box, so if you haven't seen that video, make sure you go watch that. Like I said, please go ahead and subscribe and leave your comments down below.